Metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics are three major branches of philosophy, each delving into some really deep questions about the world, how we know stuff, and how we should act. So, let's unpack these a bit. Starting with metaphysics, it's like the big, abstract part of philosophy that asks questions like, what's really real? You know, it's not just about physical stuff you can touch, but also about concepts like existence, reality, and the nature of things. Metaphysics tackles questions about whether things like universes, minds, and even time are as we perceive them. It's kind of mind-bending. Then there's epistemology, which is all about knowledge and how we come to know things. It's like the theory of knowledge. Epistemologists ask questions like, how can we be sure we know what we think we know? They're into understanding what knowledge is, how we get it, and how we can be sure it's legit. It's not just about having information but being sure that the information is true and justified. Moving on to ethics, this is where things get really interesting. Ethics is all about figuring out what's right and wrong, good and bad. It's like the moral compass of philosophy. Ethicists ponder over questions like, what makes an action right or wrong? And, how should we live our lives? They debate stuff like whether moral principles are universal or dependent on culture, and whether the ends justify the means. The cool thing is, all these branches are interconnected. Your metaphysical views can influence your epistemological stance, which in turn can impact your ethical views. Like, if you believe that there's an objective reality out there, a metaphysical stance, you might also think that we can have true knowledge about it, epistemological belief, which could lead you to believe in objective moral truths, an ethical viewpoint. Metaphysics can get pretty wild with ideas like parallel universes, time travel, and the concept of the self. It's like a playground for the imagination, but with some serious intellectual rigor. For example, if time travel were possible, what would that mean for our understanding of cause and effect? In epistemology, there are debates about whether we can know anything at all. Think about the brain in a vat hypothesis, where your brain could be in a vat being fed false experiences. How would you know if your experiences are real? This stuff is not just theoretical, it has real implications for things like science and law. Ethics is super relevant to everyday life. It's not just for philosophers, it's for everyone. Every time you make a decision, you're engaging in ethical reasoning, whether you realize it or not. From big questions like capital punishment and animal rights to everyday choices like lying to save someone's feelings, ethics is always in play. What's fascinating is how different cultures and times have had different takes on these topics. Like, ancient Greek philosophy is a world apart from modern Western philosophy, not to mention Eastern philosophies. Each culture brings its own flavor to these big questions. In metaphysics, there's this whole debate about whether the mind and body are separate or the same thing. It's called the mind-body problem, and it's super interesting. Are our minds just a product of our physical brains, or is there something more? Epistemology isn't just dry theory, it's super practical. Think about fake news and misinformation. Understanding how we know what we know helps us navigate these challenges and be more critical of the information we come across. Ethics also dives into personal morality versus societal norms. What if what's right for you goes against what society says? It's this constant balancing act between individual beliefs and collective values. So, these three branches of philosophy, metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics, are really just different ways of trying to figure out this crazy, complex world we live in. They're about asking the big questions, challenging assumptions, and trying to make sense of our existence. It's deep, thought-provoking stuff that touches on every aspect of life, and that's what makes it so endlessly fascinating.